good word, DKB here. So the New York Jets traded for safety Chuck Clark, as we know, from the Baltimore Ravens. And I wanted to spend a little bit more time diving into why we're bringing on Chuck Clark, why we even sacrifice trade compensation for a guy that everybody understood Baltimore was going to cut anyways, and who he could potentially replace. A lot of people automatically assume is going to be LaMarcus Joyner, but it could actually be Jordan Whitehead. So let's go ahead and dive into some of it. So a little bit of Chuck Clark's background. We're talking about a 27-year-old. He'll be 28 around the time the season starts. Former 6th-round pick. All he does is go on to become a full-time starter from 2019 to present day. And you're looking at a guy that was going to become an afterthought in the Baltimore Ravens secondary, with them spending a pick on Kyle Hamilton and them acquiring Marcus Williams last offseason. And so he was going to be on the outside looking in. They had to run a lot more 3 safety packages to really incorporate Kyle Hamilton anyways, but I do think it speaks volumes that Kyle Hamilton was universally praised as one of the best safeties in the draft class. And while he didn't have one of the best combines, you've seen all of the physical traits and the instincts and skill set there for him to be a starter right away. And so Chuck Clark being able to kind of hold the rookie off is no small feat in and of itself. But, we're talking about a guy that was going into, he'll be finishing his final year of his 3-year, $15 million contract with us. And some of the highlights for things that were spoken about Chuck Clark, right? It was mentioned that he's a tackling machine. We're talking about a guy that has the second most tackles over the last 3 seasons, behind just Patrick McQueen, who is the starting inside linebacker for the Ravens. When we want to talk about good versus the run, we'll kind of dive into some of his stats there. Durable. The man is an Iron Man. Currently, he actually holds the longest active streak for consecutive snaps dating back to 2021, about 1,248. It confused me a little bit because I did check with Pro Football Reference, and he's played 100% of the snaps over the last 3 seasons. That would put him at about 3,000 and something, and if he's played 100%, I would imagine that number is a lot higher. But that aside, we're talking about a guy that's only missed 2 career games, playing 96 out of 98, to let you know how much of a durable guy he's been, and just an overall good leader. You're talking about a guy that's kind of, he is the equivalent of what Ashton Davis could have became for us in my mind. Ashton Davis just hasn't developed in the same manner, and so bringing in a guy like Chuck Clark really elevates the floor and what the minimum requirements will be at one of our safety position slots moving forward. Now, that aside, one of the most underrated parts that a lot of people aren't going to be familiar with Chuck Clark is how Baltimore decided to use him. I know we mentioned versatility quite a bit. It's something that I try to pick up on in a lot of the guys that I'll cover, either from a scouting perspective when we want to talk draft prospects, or when we're talking about some of these free agent options that'll come up. And he is truly a jack of all trades. We're talking about him being played at both safety spots: outside linebacker, slot cornerback, inside linebacker. He played on the edge. He played as a boundary cornerback. They even played him in the interior defensive line, essentially lining up as a tackle for, I want to say it was 15 snaps. I'll have to find it again for you guys. But the man has been able to go out and do a little bit of everything for the Baltimore Ravens. And so seeing that come over is going to offer a lot of options for what Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich want to do on the back end. And he can look forward and see Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed doing quite a tremendous job, which should keep a lot of things in front of them, or force quarterbacks to have to press the issue a little bit, which should open up quite a few opportunities for us. So diving into the question, who is he going to replace? Now, I think the easy option is LaMarcus Joyner, and that's because most of us assume with him wanting to have, Joyner wanting to have had retired last offseason and deciding he wanted to play for Robert Saleh badly enough. And then this offseason, essentially playing the Aaron Rodgers role, we're assuming he's going to retire again. This leaves that position kind of unspoken for, right? We do have Tony Adams, who Robert Saleh has spoken quite highly of, and he played fairly well in the handful of games that he was able to get into to finish the season. But still, you don't have a 100% known product that's going to be playing that role. Plus, we have minimal bodies at the safety position right now. You're talking about Will Parks is really the only other guy, maybe an Ashton Davis over there. And then we have Jordan Whitehead, who we brought in on a 2-year, $10 million deal, I believe it was. And ultimately, it feels like he underperformed, even though I think we got away from being able to utilize him a little bit more often in the box as opposed to as a free safety. But still, for what we bought, even though we kind of bought low, it just wasn't good enough, especially considering how this defense and the front seven was able to perform. So some key things, right? What are some of the main things that we might be able to increase from a production standpoint, bringing on a guy like Chuck Clark for each position? Well, when you want to compare him versus Jordan Whitehead, imagine again, we're thinking more of a strong safety, box safety type role. He does a better job of not allowing chunk plays, right? He tries to keep everything in front of him. He's only actually allowed over a 10 yards per completion rate for 2 seasons, whereas with Jordan Whitehead, that's a lot more of a struggle. You're talking pretty much every season but one, 4 out of the 5 seasons, he's allowed double digits and 10 plus yards per completion there. Another thing is that he is not really going to where we're going to suffer is that LaMarcus Joyner does happen to allow quite a few touchdowns. He's done a better job as he's kind of progressed in that area, but I do think it could potentially be a concern depending on where he ends up getting lined up at ultimately. He's probably going to do a better job than Joyner than necessarily Jordan Whitehead in his area. I mean, Joyner gave up 4. You can argue there's plenty of more, right? There's the Sauce Gardner discrepancy one that's out there. So you could probably tack on and say maybe Jordan Whitehead's responsible for at least 5 or 6, even though they only statistically said that he's given up 4 on the season, but still, Joyner gave up a rate of almost 20 yards per completion. He allowed 4 touchdowns, and then over 100 passer rating when he got targeted. So I think the question would be, also, by the way, a unspoken part of LaMarcus Joyner's game was how efficient he actually was, is not missing huge tackles. Granted, it looks very well compared to Jordan Whitehead, who whiffs on like 2 out of every 3 tackles. It's absolutely mind-boggling. It was pretty insane, and this actually wasn't the worst year for Jordan Whitehead in that category. So I think you have to figure out what's going to give you the most bang for his buck, right? Chuck Clark ultimately is not really a free safety in terms of the skill set that he's going to bring, but you can say, I want, generally he should probably end up allowing less yards as a box safety, less touchdowns, and ultimately you'll probably get better production since he's not going to be missing tackles. You're able to put him in a few different roles, such as outside linebacker, edge, these different things that we talked about to help boost the run defense just a little bit. Jordan Whitehead wouldn't have looked so terrible if he didn't necessarily miss as many tackles. And so you're getting a huge improvement in that area, or you're getting a pretty drastic improvement just from how bad LaMarcus Joyner was in passing coverage if you do want to ultimately try to use him in the free safety role. And so I think maybe the smartest play would be to go out there and allow him to be our starting strong safety, cut Jordan Whitehead, take the cap savings, and then you can still go out and grab you a guy like Brian Branch if you're comfortable to go out there and be groomed under Chuck Clark, or to battle with Tony Adams at the free safety role to start his career, or you can go out there and get you a guy in the latter portion of Brandon Joseph, Christopher Smith, something of that like. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Where would you want to see Chuck Clark play? Free safety, strong safety? Let me know your opinions. I'll catch you again. Peace.